Hey guys, welcome to my Samoan language instruction on predication. This is a pretty important topic that we'll be discussing today. Before we get started though, I have some vocabulary here that I think is very vital for you to work on. So pause the video at this point, write these down, and we'll get started. Okay, so predication. Up until this point, we have only used one kind of Samoan predicate, verbs. So anytime we've been working on sentence structures up until this point, I've told you, okay, when a predicate phrase comes up, just fill that thing with verbs and adverbs or an action and anything describing that action. Well, that's what we normally do, but there also is sentences that have no verbs that we need to be able to use too. We do have our sentence structure that was taught in my basic grammar video that is either the equative or negative equative sentence structure that is and are statements that they're kind of equal to each other. This thing is this, or these things are this, okay? You can use that sentence structure for those kinds of sentences, but this video is more about sentences without verbs that aren't an is or are statement, okay? So basically, unlike English sentence structure, Samoan sentence structure allows adjectives, nouns, and prepositional phrases to function as predicates. So these are going to sound a little bit funny when we replace these things and put these components that I've highlighted into our predicate phrase. So basically what I'm saying is when a verb or adverb is not present, then I can put these highlighted components. So if I have an adjective, I can put that in for my predicate phrase. Or if I have a noun, I can put that in for my predicate phrase, and the same thing with my prepositional phrases. So, reading again, because adjectives, nouns, and prepositional phrases are not used as predicates in English, their meaning may seem strange at first. However, this shouldn't pose any problems if you imagine an invisible to be verb, is, am, are, was, were, etc., right before each predicate. So, because I'm going to be in the absence of verbs and adverbs, because I'm going to fill adjectives, nouns, and prepositional phrases in the predicate phrase location, it's going to sound a little bit funny, but what you need to do is just imagine an invisible to be verb. So those kinds of verbs are like this: is, am, are, was, were, has become, things like that. That will help you kind of think about the sentence, and it'll be a little bit more clear. So the bottom paragraph kind of explains how we use the adjectives, nouns, and prepositional phrases in our sentences without verbs. So no new sentence structure will be required when using these elements in predicates. Merely insert them where you would normally insert the verb in the intransitive patterns you have already learned. So I know this is a lot of mumbo jumbo, but basically what this paragraph is saying is when I have no verbs and I just have an adjective, or I have a noun, or I have a prepositional phrase, then I can put those components in for my predicate phrase. Okay, so where my verbs and adverbs usually go, I can put adjectives, nouns, and prepositional phrases in for that. They can be substituted in for the predicate phrase. And we also need to know, normally we use the intransitive pattern, and so intransitive patterns is kind of what we worked on quite a while ago. So if you're still having trouble with that, or you've forgotten a little bit, I encourage you to go review that really quick in my video on intransitive sentence structure. Okay, so I know if this isn't making sense, I encourage you to pause the video and rewind and rewatch what has been explained. Hopefully the second time around will help, and I also think that seeing some examples will help. I like examples, so here we go. So let's say we have just adjectives and adverbs instead of verbs. Okay, so then this English sentence, his wife has become sick. So the has become, we don't say that in Samoan because that is one of those imaginary to be verbs that we're talking about here. So the things that are in blue, we don't really need to translate that or put that into our Samoan sentence structure. Our tense markers kind of take the place for those in these cases. Okay, so has become, that kind of sounds like a ua. Okay, so ua is my tense marker that it's in the past, but it's closer to the future. It's kind of something that just happened. So has become can be kind of put in place of that tense marker. So let's kind of look at this sentence a little bit more. I don't have a verb in here, but I do have a subject. My subject is his wife. The subject, or the person that's doing the action, in this case there is no action, So my subject is the one that has something describing it in this case because there's no verb. And the thing that's describing the subject is this sick. So his wife, that is a noun, okay? And the thing that's describing that noun is sick, and that is an adjective. And so the thing that goes in my predicate phrase, if you remember, I have tense marker predicate phrase that goes next, okay? So predicate phrase goes next, and my predicate phrase will be fulfilled by sick in this sentence. And so ma'i goes next. And then my subject goes after that in the transitive, the intransitive pattern. So I'm working normally with intransitive patterns, and so I don't need an E to mark the doer because there is nothing receiving that action in this case. And so his wife is the doer, and that goes next. Okay. So the reason why I use intransitive normally is because I don't have an object receiving the action. Okay. In this sentence, I only have a subject and an adjective that's describing that subject. Okay. So that's how I put my sentences together. So basically, if I don't have a verb, I use an adjective or a noun or a prepositional phrase. I put that in for my predicate phrase, and that's pretty much the bulk of it. And I also use the intransitive sentence structure usually. Okay, so the teacher was angry. So let's think about this. Was is a kind of a past tense marker, so that's why I use saw right here. Saw goes in for the was. Sometimes I can also use na, but in this case, it's not clear when the teacher was angry. It's just clear that she was angry in the past, and that's why I use saw. If it was clear, if it's like my teacher was angry at 12 o'clock yesterday, or if it was clear she was mad at a certain time, then I would use na. But in this case, it's not clear, so I use saw. Okay, where is my subject? My subject, again, is at the beginning of the sentence, is the teacher, and the thing that's describing that subject is angry, so angry goes next, and that's ita, and then my subject goes next, and that's lefaya ongna. Okay, so that's how I continue to put together sentence structures without verbs and adverbs. Okay, basically I just put the thing that's describing my subject, the second thing in the sentence. I have a tense marker that always goes first, and then whatever's describing that goes next, and then my subject follows that. And that's normally the case, okay? So her husband is quiet. So again, her husband is at the beginning. That's the subject. That is kind of tells me that it's an A tense marker. So A goes here. And then the thing that's describing the husband, okay, is quiet, so quiet goes next, a file mu, and then the subject is her husband, and that follows that. Okay, so moving on to our last example sentence. This toothbrush is the subject, and the yellow, that's the thing describing this toothbrush. So I have a tense marker again, and then sama is the thing that's describing the toothbrush, and then the subject of the sentence is this toothbrush. Lene pulumu nifo. Okay? So I hope that has made sense. So when I have an adjective or an adverb, basically I just put the thing that's describing my subject second in the sentence structure, and then I follow it with the subject. In a lot of cases, as you can see on the left, it's the exact opposite in English, where I'll have the subject that goes first, and then I'll have one of these to be verbs that are in blue, and then the thing that's describing it goes next, whereas it's the opposite way in Samoan. All of these things, those came, it's the second spot in the sentence structure, okay? So if you look at the things that I tried to circle, you know that the thing that was at the end of the sentence in Samoan, it's now the thing that's second, okay? And the thing that was first in Samoan, the subject, that goes third in my sentence structure, okay? So just realize if I have a subject in English, normally the adjective or the adverb comes after that, okay? Whereas in Samoan, it's usually I have the adverb or adjective come before my subject. And so hopefully that makes sense. If that doesn't make sense, I hope that these examples are making sense to you. And if not, I encourage you to rewatch again. Okay. So now let's say we don't have any, we just have nouns. Okay. Nouns are what's describing our subject, okay? So in this case, my father was a minister. There is no adjective in this case. There's just another noun. So my subject in this sentence is my father. My father is the subject, okay? And the thing that's describing him, you could kind of think of that as an adjective, but minister is not an adjective, it's a noun. Minister is a kind of a title. So that's what's describing my father. So basically I have a tense marker again. So sa, that's kind of was a. And then fai feao. Fai feao is the thing that's describing it, and it's a noun. So fai feao. And then my subject is lo'utama. Okay? So just for example, I want to really, in English I say I was a minister, but in Samoan I don't really have the a in this sentence. And that's because I have an asterisk right here on my nouns, and that's explained right here. So when I use nouns as predicates, they may be followed by adjectives. That's nothing new, but the determiner is omitted. So that's why this right here, when I use a noun as a predicate phrase, I don't need to put the in there. I don't need sa se fai fiao. I don't need to say sa se fai fiao. I just say sa fai fiao lo tuma, because I'm using a noun as a predicate phrase. So when I use nouns as predicate phrase, I don't need to use a determiner. So determiners are like say, lay, ni. So those are my most common ones. And there's also some other ones, but that should help you remember what a determiner is. Okay, so moving on to our next example sentences. We are good boys. So the subject in this case is we, okay? And are being, so the are being, that kind of tells me right now is happening. So I could use either olo'o or a in this case, okay? And then good boys is the thing that's describing it. So I have a tense marker, olo'o, and good boys that comes next, and then my subject follows that, okay? So my last example here, I'm not using the intransitive structure. I'm going to be using a descriptive pronoun, okay? And when I use descriptive pronouns, I switch up the sentence structure a little bit. So I do tense marker, then I do subject, okay? I do subject, and then I do my predicate phrase. And so I could have done it either way. I could have done it the way that I had been doing with the intransitive sentence structure. But in this case, I wanted to show you can do it in different ways. And so basically, I just do the descriptive pronoun second in the statement, and then the thing that's being described comes next. So, for example, I will be a teacher. So this is a future tense. So that's olea. Sorry, excuse me. So I is the subject, but because I'm using a descriptive pronoun, that's going to come next, so that's o. And then teacher is the thing that I'm going to become, and that's right here. So hopefully this is making sense. So normally when I use adjectives and adverbs and nouns as predicate phrases, I usually use the intransitive case. But in this case, you can see that I can also use descriptive pronouns, and I just switch it up a little bit, okay? So hopefully this is making sense, and moving on. So I encourage you to pause the video if needed and rewatch anything that is not completely clear. Okay, so prepositional phrases, this is our last thing that we can put into our predicate phrases when we're lacking verbs and adverbs. So your watch is at me. This is kind of a weird way of thinking about it. The way that you would translate this in English is I have your watch, okay? But the way that they say this in Samoan is your watch is at me, okay? So is kind of telling me it's either an A or an olo'o tense marker. So, whoops. Olo'o is what's happening. Your watch is right now, it's currently with me kind of thing. And then I have a yatea'u. This is a prepositional phrase, to me. Okay, or is at me is a prepositional phrase. And that's where my predicate phrase should go, but because I don't have anything, I don't really have a verb or an adverb or anything like that, is at is an example of a prepositional phrase, and so that can go in place of my predicate phrase. And so that's olo'u yatea'u, and then the subject comes next, which is your watch, and that's lawati. Okay? So hopefully that makes sense. Moving on to our next sentence. She will be in the house. So will be kind of implies a future tense. So that's why I have an olea right there. And then my subject is she, and in the house, okay, is my prepositional phrase. So my prepositional phrase, that can take place in my predicate phrase, so that's why I have ile fale, and then my subject goes last, and that's o ia. Okay? Moving on to our last, this is a scripture found in the Doctrine and Covenants. If ye are not one, ye are not of me. Okay? So a phi, this kind of throws our sentence structure off a little bit. Because of the if, we don't need a tense marker, but we just need the word if. So a phi goes right there. Okay? Now, ye are not one, ye are not of me. Okay, so are not is a prepositional phrase. Okay, so that's right here. Ele tasi, are not one, is our prepositional phrase. And ye is just a fancy or old school word for saying you or you all. So that's our subject. So our prepositional phrase takes the place. Sorry, excuse me. Our prepositional phrase takes the place of the predicate phrase, and then our subject comes next, and that's why ye or you all or oto comes next. And then in the same part here, ye are not of me. So ye is our subject again, so that comes last. And then not of me is our predicate phrase or prepositional phrase that acts as the predicate phrase, and that's elea'u, and then oto is the subject. Okay? So I know this is a pretty dense subject. Just remember, when I have a sentence without verbs or adverbs, I can stick adjectives, adverbs, prepositional phrases, and nouns in place for that predicate phrase. And basically, I normally take the intransitive sentence structure, but I can also do descriptive sentence structure as well. Here's some other examples. I want you to kind of just block off the Samoan side, and I want you to try to get these down. I want you to try to work on these without looking on the right side, and then if you can get the ones on the right, then you're getting this. And another way is, so I want you to do that first, and then I also want you to see some published works in Samoan or some books of some sort. And I want you to try to get familiar with this concept. Not every sentence is going to have verbs and adverbs, but there's going to be sentences that have, with that lack verbs that will have prepositional phrases, or they'll have nouns, or they'll have adjectives. And so these things you can still say those things, and basically you just keep the same sentence structure. You just replace the predicate phrase with something besides a verb. So hopefully, if you pause the video and not look at the screen, I hope that you use this time to be able to try to practice on your own, okay? And I hope you were able to get these on your own, and if you weren't, then kind of look at why I put what I did in Samoan, and look at what you didn't put, and see where you could have went differently, okay? So basically, guys, this is a very important subject, and I encourage you to watch this video multiple times because it is a little bit dense. Basically, you need to be familiar with your English grammar. But if English grammar is a harder thing for you, think about, okay, what is the subject? That usually comes third, and anything that's describing that subject usually comes second. And my tense marker always comes first in almost every case. So just think, okay, tense marker, then the thing that's describing my subject comes second, and then my subject comes third. And that might help you too. Okay, so until next time, guys, tofa, soy